The wrench slipped from Danny's grease-covered hands and clattered against the metal floor of the repair bay. He had been working on the same atmospheric processor for 3 hours, and his back was screaming at him to take a break. Redstone Station never slept, and neither did the machinery that kept everyone alive in the cold void of space. Danny wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and left another black streak of oil across his face. "Reeves, you got a visitor," Ty called from the bay entrance. His voice carried an odd tone, something between amusement and concern. Danny looked up from his work and saw a crowd gathering outside his repair shop. That was never a good sign. The last time a crowd formed, it was because someone's coolant system had exploded and flooded half the lower decks. He grabbed a rag and wiped his hands as he walked toward the entrance. Lord Hassick stood in the center of the crowd, his scales gleaming under the harsh station lights. The Straken noble was tall, nearly 8 feet, with deep purple scales that marked him as high nobility. His war dragon, a massive crimson beast, stood behind him with wings folded against its body. The dragon's eyes glowed with a dull intelligence, the kind that came from years of conditioning and neural implants. "Human," Hassick's voice boomed across the bay. "We have business to discuss." Danny kept his face neutral. He had fixed one of Hassick's transport ships 2 weeks ago, and the noble had refused to pay the full amount. Said human labor was worth less than proper engineering. Danny had let it go because arguing with Straken nobility was a good way to get spaced. "My lord," Danny said, keeping his voice level, "if this is about the invoice, I already adjusted it per your request." Hassick's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "The invoice? Oh, human. This is about proper compensation." He gestured behind him, and 2 of his servants dragged something forward on a heavy chain. Danny's breath caught in his throat. It was a dragon, but unlike any he had seen before. Where most Straken dragons bore scales of red, gold, or deep blue, this one was pure white. Not cream or pale yellow, but white like fresh snow. The dragon was smaller than Hassick's champion, maybe only 12 feet long and painfully thin. Its wings hung at odd angles, the cybernetic joints clearly broken and twisted. One eye was swollen shut and deep scars crisscrossed its hide. The crowd began to murmur. Danny heard the word albino whispered with disgust and fear. "This creature," Hassick announced loudly, "is payment for your services. A generous gift, would you not agree?" The crowd erupted in laughter. Even some of the human workers chuckled nervously. Everyone knew what an albino dragon meant in Straken culture. Bad luck, genetic failure. A cosmic joke. Danny had heard the stories. Albino dragons were destroyed at birth, considered too defective to live. Somehow this one had survived, probably kept alive just for moments like this to be used as an insult. The white dragon lifted its head and looked at Danny. Its one good eye was pale blue, almost transparent. There was something in that gaze that made Danny's chest tighten, not animal stupidity or drugged compliance, something else, something aware. "She was my son's practice dragon," Hassick continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "But even he could not make this worthless creature fight properly. Her wings broke in her first arena match. She is scheduled for termination, but I thought, why waste her? Give her to the human. Trash for trash." He laughed, and his entourage joined in. Danny looked at the dragon. She was still staring at him, her body trembling with either fear or pain. The cybernetic implants in her wings were crude, the kind of cheap hardware that would cause constant agony. He could see infection around the ports where metal met flesh. She had been suffering for a long time. The smart thing to do would be to refuse. A dragon, even a broken one, ate a lot of food. The medical supplies alone would cost him months of savings. And for what? A creature that every alien species on the station would see as cursed. It would hurt his business. It would make him a bigger joke than he already was. Danny stepped forward and took the chain from the servant's hands. "I accept," he said simply. Hassick's smile widened. "Excellent. May you both bring each other the fortune you deserve." The crowd roared with laughter as the Straken lord and his entourage swept away, leaving Danny standing alone with the white dragon. The crowd slowly dispersed, people shaking their heads and making jokes. Within minutes, the bay entrance was empty except for Rachel, one of the other human mechanics. She walked up beside Danny and looked at the dragon. "You know she is probably going to die anyway," Rachel said quietly. "Those wing implants are infected. Even if you fix them, albinos do not live long. Their genetics are unstable." "Maybe," Danny replied. He slowly approached the dragon, moving carefully. She flinched but did not pull away. Up close, he could see how malnourished she was. Every rib visible under her pale scales. The cybernetic ports were leaking a clear fluid that he recognized as plasma contaminated with bacteria. "What are you going to call her?" Rachel asked. Danny had not thought about names. He looked at the dragon's white scales, at the way she seemed to glow under the harsh bay lights. "Frost," he said. "Her name is Frost." The dragon's head tilted slightly at the sound of her new name. Her tail, which had been tucked tight against her body, relaxed just a fraction. Rachel sighed. "You are going to need help. Those ports need to be cleaned and the infection treated before you can even think about fixing the wings." "I know," Danny said. He looked at Frost, at the pain in her pale eye. "But I have fixed worse." That was a lie, and they both knew it. But Rachel just nodded and went to gather medical supplies. Danny knelt down in front of Frost and held out his hand, palm up. She sniffed it cautiously, her breath hot against his skin. "Well, girl," Danny said softly, "looks like we are both the joke now. But we will figure this out together." Frost closed her eye and leaned her scarred snout against his palm, just for a moment, just long enough for Danny to feel the trust she was offering. Then she pulled back and lowered herself to the ground, exhausted. Danny stood and looked at the work ahead of him. It was going to be a long night. Pain was the only thing Frost had ever known. The implants in her wing joint sent constant signals of agony through her nervous system, signals that her Sraken handlers had told her were necessary for proper control. Weakness had to be burned away. Obedience had to be carved into flesh and bone. That was the Sraken way. But this human was different. Danny moved around her slowly, never making sudden movements. He spoke in soft tones that did not carry the sharp command structures she was used to. When she flinched away from his touch, he simply waited. He did not strike her or activate the pain responses in her collar. He just waited until she stopped shaking, then tried again. "I need to look at these ports," Danny said, gesturing to the metal implants embedded in her wing joints. "I promise I will be gentle, but this is going to hurt. I am sorry." Frost did not understand all the words, but she understood tone. She had learned to read voices during her time in the fighting pits. This voice did not carry cruelty. She lowered her head in submission and waited for the pain. Danny's hands were surprisingly gentle as he examined the infected ports. He made soft noises of dismay as he worked, muttering words like barbaric and cheap garbage under his breath. Rachel brought supplies, and together they began cleaning the wounds. It did hurt. Frost's muscles tensed and her claws scraped against the metal floor. But Danny kept talking to her throughout the process. Nonsense words, soothing sounds. When she whimpered, he paused and stroked the unmarred scales on her neck until she relaxed again. "These implants are causing the infection," Danny explained to Rachel, though Frost sensed he was also talking to her. "They are not sealed properly. Bacteria gets in and her immune system cannot fight it off because the metal is leaching toxins into her bloodstream. We need to remove them." "Remove them?" Rachel sounded doubtful. Her nervous system has been integrated with those ports for years. "Removing them could cause permanent damage. Leaving them in will definitely kill her," Danny replied. He looked at Frost, meeting her pale eye. "What do you think, girl? Want to take the risk?" Frost did not understand the question, but something in Danny's gaze made her feel safe for the first time in her life. She pressed her snout gently against his shoulder. Yes. Whatever this human wanted to do, she would trust him. Over the following days, Danny worked on Frost's medical issues while continuing his regular repair jobs. He set up a corner of the bay for her with soft padding salvaged from old cargo containers. He brought her food, real food, not the nutrient paste she had been fed in the arena. At first she could barely eat, her stomach unused to solid meals, but Danny was patient. Ty helped when he could, bringing supplies and keeping watch. Word had spread through the station about the human and his broken dragon. Some people came by to mock, others just to stare. A few surprised Danny by offering help. Grit was one of those. The Tolgran engineer was built low to the ground with 4 arms and a face that looked like melted rock. He appeared one evening carrying a case of medical-grade polymers. "Heard you were doing something stupid," Grit said, his voice rumbling like stones grinding together. "I respect stupid when it makes the Sraken angry." He set down the case. "These will help with the port removal. Anti-rejection coating. Expensive, so do not waste it." Danny looked at the supplies with genuine gratitude. "I cannot pay you for this right now." Grit waved a dismissive hand. Did I ask for payment? Just do not let her die. Would be nice to see Hasek's insult turn into his embarrassment. As weeks passed, Frost began to understand that this place was different from the arena. There were no shock collars here, no training sessions that left her bleeding on the ground. Danny worked on her wings carefully, removing the old cybernetic ports bit by bit. Each removal was agony, but afterwards came relief as the constant pain signals finally stopped. Between medical procedures, Danny talked to her. He told her about his work, about the station, about Earth and the blue skies there. Frost did not understand most of it, but she listened to his voice and felt something warm growing in her chest, something she had no name for. One night, after Danny had removed the last of the old ports from her left wing, Frost did something she had never done before. She moved close to where he sat on the floor, exhausted from the delicate work, and carefully laid her head in his lap. She felt him tense in surprise, then relax. His hand came to rest on her snout, warm and calloused. "Hey there, girl," Danny whispered. "We are making progress." Dr. Lynn Torres arrived the next week. She was a human xenobiologist who worked in the station's research sector. Danny had contacted her about mapping Frost's nervous system for the new wing implants he was designing. "This is fascinating," Lynn said, running scanners over Frost's body. The dragon tensed under the unfamiliar equipment, but Danny's hand on her neck kept her calm. "Her neural structure is more complex than standard Sraken dragons. Much more complex. Danny, do you realize what you have here? A dragon with broken wings that everyone thinks is garbage?" Danny replied dryly. "A potential genius that was never given a chance to develop," Lynn corrected. She showed him the scan results. "Look at this. Her brain shows development patterns similar to sentient species. She is not just trained intelligence. She is actually intelligent. The Sraken breed for obedience and suppress higher cognitive functions in their war dragons. But albinism apparently came with some unexpected genetic variations." Danny looked at Frost with new understanding. She looked back at him, and he could swear he saw knowing in that pale eye. "They called you defective," he said softly. "But you were not broken. You were just different." Frost made a low rumbling sound deep in her chest. Not a growl, but something else. Something almost like agreement. The real breakthrough came when Danny started working on the new wing designs. He spread his sketches across the workbench, talking through the engineering problems out loud as he often did. Frost watched from her corner with apparent disinterest. Then something strange happened. Frost got up and walked to the workbench. She studied the sketches for a long moment, then carefully used one claw to push a particular design toward Danny. Then she pointed with her snout at the joint articulation drawing and made a questioning sound. Danny stared at her. "Are you saying this design would work better?" Frost tapped the paper twice with her claw, then looked at him expectantly. Rachel, who had witnessed the entire exchange, let out a low whistle. "She just gave you engineering feedback." Danny sat down heavily on his work stool. He looked at the design Frost had indicated, really looked at it, and realized she was right. The joint articulation would provide better flexibility with her specific wing structure. "You understand what I am building," he said, not quite believing it. "You actually understand." Frost settled down beside the workbench, clearly intending to stay while he worked. Danny laughed, a sound of pure delight and disbelief. "Okay then, partner. Let us figure this out together." From that moment, everything changed. Frost became an active participant in her own reconstruction. She indicated when something looked wrong with the designs. She allowed Danny to take measurements without restraint. She even started bringing him tools when he pointed at them, understanding the connection between objects and names. Late one night, with Frost dozing beside his workbench and the wing designs finally complete, Danny allowed himself to feel hope. This was not just about fixing broken machinery anymore. This was about proving that someone the universe had labeled as worthless could be magnificent. He just needed to give her the wings to prove it. The materials list sat on Danny's workbench like a prison sentence. Titanium carbon weave for the wing frames, quantum processors for the neural interface, biogel compounds that would allow the implants to integrate without causing rejection, medical-grade sensors, emergency backup systems. Every item was expensive, and together they added up to more money than Danny made in a year. He had submitted the requisition to Station Administrator Novak Pierce 3 days ago. The response came back in the form of a curt message. Request denied. Budget cannot support recreational projects, recreational, As if Frost's life was some kind of hobby, Danny crumpled the message and threw it across the bay. Frost, who had been watching him work, tilted her head in concern. She had gained weight over the past few weeks, and her scales had begun to shine with better health. The infections were gone and her eyes were bright. But without new wings, she would never fly. She would just be a grounded dragon in a repair bay, trapped by economics instead of cruelty. "I will figure something out," Danny promised her. "I always do." But he had no idea how. The answer came from an unexpected direction. Grit appeared at the bay entrance the next morning with two other aliens Danny did not recognize. One was a Felnar, a species that resembled six-limbed cats with patches of crystalline fur. The other was small and amphibious, belonging to a species whose name Danny could never pronounce correctly. "We heard about the materials problem," Grit said without preamble. "We might have a solution. This is Patches." He gestured to the Felnar. "She works in the mining operations. And this is Ribbit." The amphibious alien waved a webbed hand. "He handles chemical processing." "Okay," Danny said slowly. "What kind of solution?" Patches stepped forward, her crystalline fur chiming softly as she moved. "There is a black market on this station. Not the official one that the administration pretends to regulate, but a real one. Workers helping workers. You need titanium carbon weave? I can get you manufacturing scraps from the mining operation. Not perfect, but you can work with it. And I can synthesize biogel compounds from the water reclamation systems," Ribbit added, his voice bubbling. "The base proteins are the same. I just need to adjust the molecular structure. Give me 2 weeks." Danny looked at them in disbelief. "Why would you do this?" Grit's rocky face somehow managed to look offended. "Because Hasek is a piece of garbage who treats everyone below his station like they are less than dust. Because watching you help that dragon makes some of us remember that kindness exists. Because maybe if the broken albino can fly, the rest of us are not as worthless as they say." He crossed his forearms. "Do you want the help or not?" "Yes," Danny said quickly. "Yes, I want the help. Thank you." Over the following weeks, a network formed. Workers from all over the station began quietly contributing to Frost's new wings. A Siracan exile named Ren, who had been cast out from his clan for questioning tradition, provided detailed information about dragon physiology that was not available in any database. An elderly human woman named Mrs. Kaufman, who ran the station's cafeteria, started sending extra food for Frost without charging Danny. Ty and Rachel worked extra shifts to cover Danny's bay when he needed to focus on the wing construction. Dr. Lynn Torres became a regular presence, helping map Frost's neural pathways with a precision that would make the integration safer. She worked late into the night, fueled by terrible coffee and scientific curiosity. "The Sraken method is brutal," Lynn explained one evening as she studied the scan results. "They force the dragon's nervous system to accept commands through pain conditioning. But your approach is different. You are building a system that will work with her natural thought patterns. The wings will respond to her intentions instead of override them. It is revolutionary, Danny. If this works, you will have created something the Sraken Empire never imagined possible." "I just want her to fly," Danny replied. "I know, but this is bigger than that." Lord Hasek visited the bay twice during the construction period. The first time, he simply stood at the entrance and watched Danny work on the wing frames. His expression was impossible to read, but the contempt in his eyes was clear enough. "Still wasting time on the albino," Hasek observed.
"How human of you."
"Throwing resources at a lost cause because your emotions demand it." Danny did not look up from his work. "Is there something you need, Lord Hasek?" "I need nothing from you. I simply wanted to see the spectacle before it ends in inevitable failure." Hasek's tail swished behind him. "You cannot rebuild what was bred for failure. The albino is a cosmic mistake. Even if you somehow repair her wings, her genetics are unstable. She will not live long enough to make your effort worthwhile." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Danny said evenly. Hasek left with a dismissive snort, but his visit left Danny unsettled. Frost sensed his mood and pressed her snout against his shoulder, offering comfort in the only way she knew. The second visit was different. Hasek brought his champion war dragon Crimson with him and demanded entry to the bay. Danny could not refuse a Sraken noble without causing serious problems, so he let them in. Crimson was everything Frost was not. Powerful, perfectly proportioned, with scales that gleamed like polished rubies. The war dragon moved with lethal grace, and its eyes held the dull obedience of extensive neural conditioning. It was a weapon, pure and simple. Hasek walked around the bay examining Danny's work. He paused at the wing frames, now nearly complete. They were beautiful in their own right, silver-white metal that seemed to glow under the work lights. The articulation joints were works of art, designed to provide maximum flexibility while maintaining structural integrity. Adequate craftsmanship, Hasek admitted grudgingly, for human work. But craftsmanship does not change fundamental flaws. When these wings fail, as they will, I want the albino returned to me. She is still technically Sraken property, and I will not have her carcass rotting in a human repair bay. She is not going to fail, Danny said. We shall see. Hasek left with Crimson following obediently behind him. The war dragon did not even glance at Frost as it passed. To Crimson, she did not exist. But Frost watched Crimson leave with an expression that Danny had learned to recognize. It was the look she got when she was analyzing something, understanding it on a level that went beyond simple observation. She was comparing herself to the war dragon and finding the differences. That night, as Danny worked on the neural interface processors, Frost brought him something she had hidden in her corner of the bay. It was a piece of broken metal from her old wing implants, one of the crude cybernetic components that had caused her so much pain. She placed it deliberately next to the new quantum processor Danny was calibrating. The message was clear. Old versus new, pain versus freedom. She understood exactly what these new wings represented. That's right, girl, Danny said softly. These are going to be different. These are going to be yours. The final component arrived 3 months after Danny had started the project. It was the neural mesh interface, the most critical piece. This was what would allow Frost's thoughts to control the wings naturally. Ren delivered it personally, wrapped in protective cloth. This cost me every favor I had saved, Ren said. His Sraken features were scarred from his exile, but his eyes were kind. It is military-grade hardware, designed for the elite warrior dragons. If anyone discovers I obtained this, I will be executed. I will never tell anyone where it came from, Danny promised. I know. That is why I trust you. Ren looked at Frost, who watched him with cautious respect. She is special. Even among albinos, she is unique. Do not let them destroy her. With all the components finally assembled, Danny laid out the complete wing system in his bay. Both wings, fully articulated with integrated neural meshes and emergency backup systems. They were larger than Frost's original wings had been, designed to provide maximum lift for her body structure. The silver-white surface would blend perfectly with her scales. Everyone who had contributed to the project came to see the finished work. Grit, Patches, Ribbit, Mrs. Kaufman, Ty, Rachel, Lynn, Ren, and a dozen others. They stood in the bay and looked at what they had built together. Wings that represented more than just engineering. Wings that represented hope. Surgery is scheduled for tomorrow, Lynn announced. We will need at least 6 hours for the integration procedure. The risk is significant. If we make any mistakes with the neural mesh, it could cause permanent damage to her motor control. Danny knelt beside Frost and put his hand on her neck. This is your choice, girl. If you want to wait, if you are not ready, we can postpone. No one will blame you. Frost looked at the wings spread out on the bay floor. Then she looked at Danny. She pressed her snout firmly against his chest and rumbled deep in her throat. The decision was made. She was ready to fly or die trying. Okay then, Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. Tomorrow we give you back your wings. The surgery took 8 hours instead of 6. Danny's hands shook with exhaustion as he made the final neural connection, but he forced them steady. One mistake here could leave Frost paralyzed. Dr. Lynn Torres monitored the biological readouts while Ren assisted with the cybernetic integration. Rachel and Ty kept the bay secured, making sure no one interrupted the delicate procedure. Frost lay unconscious on the surgical platform, breathing slowly under the anesthetic. Her new wings were attached now, the silver-white frames extending from her body like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The neural mesh was integrated into her spine, countless microscopic connections linking her thoughts to the wing mechanisms. Final connection complete, Danny announced. His voice was hoarse from hours of concentration. Running diagnostic now. The screens lit up with data. Neural pathways mapped in green, showing successful integration. No rejection signals. No errors in the connection matrix. The wings responded to test commands, articulation points moving smoothly through their full range of motion. It worked, Lynn breathed. Danny, it actually worked. They kept Frost sedated for 3 more days while her body adjusted to the implants. The healing process was closely monitored. Every hour, someone checked her vital signs and neural activity. The station's underground network waited anxiously for news. Even people who had never contributed to the project found themselves hoping the broken albino would wake up. When Frost finally opened her eyes, Danny was sitting beside her. She made a confused sound and tried to move, then froze as she felt the weight on her back. The wings. She twisted her neck to look at them, her pale eyes widening. "Easy, girl," Danny said softly. "Do not try to move them yet. Let your nervous system finish adjusting." But Frost was not listening. She focused on her new wings, and slowly, hesitantly, they moved. Just a small flex at first, then a full extension. The silver-white frame spread wide, catching the bay lights. They were beautiful. They were hers. Frost made a sound that Danny had never heard before. It started deep in her chest and rose to a high, keening note of pure joy. She stood up carefully, testing her balance with the new weight distribution. Then she extended her wings again, feeling the way the neural mesh responded to her thoughts. Not commands forced through pain conditioning, but natural extension of her own will. "We need to take this slow," Lynn warned. "She needs physical therapy before attempting flight. The muscles have to build strength, and she needs to learn how these wings work." The recovery process was challenging. Frost's body had to adapt to wings that responded differently than her old cybernetics. Danny worked with her every day, coaching her through exercises, wing extensions, balance training, learning to feel the air resistance against the new surfaces. Other dragons would have been trained through punishment and reward. Frost learned through patience and encouragement. When she got frustrated, Danny was there to calm her. When she made progress, he celebrated with her. Rachel brought special treats from the cafeteria. Ty built training equipment to help strengthen her wing muscles. After 2 weeks, Frost could perform controlled wing beats. Not enough to lift her off the ground, but enough to create significant wind. Danny stood in front of her, his hair blown back by the force of her wings, and grinned like an idiot. "That is my girl," he said proudly. "You are going to fly." Then Lord Hassick returned, and everything changed. He arrived with an entourage of Sraken nobility and a formal declaration. Station Administrator Pierce accompanied them, looking uncomfortable but resigned. The bay was crowded with important aliens who looked at Frost with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. "Human Reeves," Hassick announced formally. "I have come to reclaim my property." Danny stepped between Hassick and Frost. "She is not your property. You gave her to me, remember? In front of witnesses. As payment for services rendered." "I gave you a defective creature scheduled for termination," Hassick corrected. "Not a dragon with expensive cybernetic implants worth more than your entire repair bay. Those wings are Sraken military technology, stolen and misappropriated. I am within my rights to reclaim both the dragon and the equipment." "The wings were built from donated materials and human engineering," Danny countered. "Nothing was stolen." Pierce cleared his throat nervously. "Lord Hassick has filed an official complaint with the station authority. Legally, the situation is complicated. However, there is a precedent that might resolve this." He looked apologetic. "The Trial of Winds. It is an ancient Sraken test of dragon capability. If Frost can complete the trial, she would be recognized as a fully functional dragon and granted independent status. If she fails or refuses, she reverts to Lord Hassick's ownership." Danny looked at Wren, who stood at the back of the crowd. The exiled Sraken nodded slightly. The Trial of Winds was legitimate, one of the old laws that even the Sraken nobility could not easily dismiss. "What does the trial involve?" Danny asked. Hassick smiled, showing all his teeth. "A simple test of aerial capability. Navigate the storm field at the station's North Pole, outmaneuver automated defense drones from the old war, cross the Needle Canyon, and reach the summit marker on Mount Razor, a trial that has killed trained war dragons in peak condition." He gestured dismissively at Frost. "But please, feel free to enter your broken albino. I will enjoy watching her fail," the crowd murmured. Even the aliens who supported Danny looked doubtful. The Trial of Winds was notoriously dangerous. Dragons trained from birth for aerial combat died attempting it. Danny looked at Frost. She was watching him with those pale eyes, waiting for his decision. He could refuse. Let Hassick take her. She would die, but at least she would not suffer through a trial designed to kill her. But Frost extended her wings slightly and rumbled. She wanted to try. She wanted to fight. We accept, Danny said. 1 month to prepare. That is traditional for trial challenges, correct? Hasek's smile widened. Correct. 1 month from today. I look forward to your failure, human. As the Sraken delegation left, the full weight of what Danny had agreed to settled on his shoulders. Rachel grabbed his arm. Danny, are you insane? She is not ready for something like that. She has only been flying for 2 weeks. We have no choice, Danny replied. If we refuse, Hasek takes her anyway. At least this way she has a chance. A chance to die in a trial instead of an execution chamber, Ty pointed out darkly. Ren approached once the bay was clear. I can help you prepare. I have studied the Trial of Winds extensively. There are patterns in the storm field, weaknesses in the drone programming. The trial is difficult but not impossible if you understand it. Dr. Lynn Torres joined them, her expression determined. I can optimize her neural response times, shave off milliseconds in her reaction speed. It might make the difference. Grit arrived with patches and ribbit. We can upgrade her wings, add emergency stabilizers, better power distribution. If you are going to do something stupid, do it properly. One by one, the underground network that had built Frost's wings rallied to help her survive the trial. Plans were drawn up, training schedules created. The bay became a war room focused on a single goal: help Frost live long enough to be free. Frost herself seemed to understand the stakes. She threw herself into training with an intensity that surprised everyone. Danny pushed her hard, teaching her aerial maneuvers that would help in the trial. Ren provided tactical advice based on his knowledge of Sraken combat doctrine. The automated defense drones were programmed to respond to standard dragon flight patterns. Frost would need to fly unpredictably, using her smaller size and enhanced agility. The storm field required reading electromagnetic currents and using them for thrust instead of fighting against them. The Needle Canyon was pure skill and nerve, a gap so narrow that wings had to be folded at the right moment or be ripped off against the rocks. Every night, Danny fell asleep in the bay with Frost curled protectively around him. She had become more than a repair project or a symbol of defiance. She was his partner, his friend. The thought of losing her made his chest hurt. 2 weeks before the trial, Frost achieved full flight for the first time. She launched herself from the bay floor and soared up to the ceiling, her wings beating powerfully. The joy on her draconic face was unmistakable. She was flying. Really flying. Danny watched with tears in his eyes. This was what she had been meant to do all along. Not fight in arenas or serve as a weapon, just fly. Just be free. You are magnificent, he told her when she landed. The most magnificent thing I have ever seen. Frost pressed her snout against his face, purring. Whatever happened in the trial, she had experienced this. Freedom in flight. No one could take that memory away from her. The night before the trial, Danny could not sleep. He sat in the bay watching Frost rest. Her wings were folded against her body, the silver-white surfaces gleaming. She looked peaceful, confident, ready. Ren found him there in the early morning hours. You know there is a good chance she will die, the exiled Sraken said quietly. The trial is designed to kill. That is its purpose. To prove only the strongest dragons deserve life. I know, Danny replied. But she deserves the chance to prove she is strong, that she is not broken or defective, that she is exactly what she was always meant to be. And if she fails? Danny looked at his friend with fierce determination. Then she fails flying. Not chained in an execution chamber. Not labeled as garbage. She fails as a dragon trying to claim her freedom. That is more than most beings ever get. Ren was quiet for a long moment. Then he placed one clawed hand on Danny's shoulder. You have given her more than wings, human. You have given her dignity. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that. As the sun rose on trial day, Frost opened her eyes and looked at Danny. She stood and extended her wings fully, ready. The broken albino was broken no more. Now she was just a dragon who wanted to fly. The trial grounds were located at the most inhospitable part of Redstone Station. Here, the station's rotating sections created artificial gravity through dangerous proximity to a permanent electromagnetic storm. The storm had been there for decades, a natural phenomenon that the station builders had incorporated into their defense systems during the Old War. Automated drones still patrolled the area. Their programming never deactivated, attacking anything that entered their airspace. Thousands had gathered to watch. Word of the trial had spread beyond the station, drawing spectators from nearby colonies and ships. Most came expecting to see the broken albino fail spectacularly. Some came hoping to see Lord Hassick humiliated. A small group, mostly the workers who had helped build Frost's wings, came to bear witness to something they believed would be historic. Danny stood at the launch platform with Frost beside him. Her white scales seemed to glow in the harsh light, and her silver wings were folded tightly against her body. She was nervous. He could see it in the way her tail twitched and her pupils dilated. But there was determination there too. She had trained for this. She was ready as she would ever be. Lord Hassick stood on the official viewing platform with his champion war dragon Crimson. The noble's expression was smug satisfaction, barely concealed behind formal politeness. Next to him, Station Administrator Pierce looked uncomfortable but resigned to whatever outcome would occur. "The rules are simple," Pierce announced to the crowd. "The dragon must complete the full course, navigate the storm field, evade the defense drones, cross the Needle Canyon, and reach the summit marker. Time limit is 1 hour. Any deviation from the course or failure to reach the summit results in disqualification." He paused, and returned to Lord Hassick's custody. Danny knelt beside Frost and placed his hand on her neck. "Listen to me, girl. You do not have to prove anything to these people. If at any point you want to stop, you just land. I will figure something else out. Your life is worth more than their approval." Frost looked at him with those pale blue eyes. Then she did something that made the crowd gasp. She extended one wing and gently wrapped it around Danny, pulling him close in what could only be described as a hug. It was a deliberate gesture of affection and trust. "I know," Danny whispered. "I love you too. Now go show them what broken looks like when it is put back together right." Frost released him and moved to the launch point. The crowd grew silent as she positioned herself at the edge of the platform. Below her was a 1,000-foot drop into the storm field. Lightning arced through the clouds, and the electromagnetic interference made the air taste like metal. The launch signal sounded. Frost jumped. For a moment she fell and Danny's heart stopped. Then her wings snapped open and caught the air and she was flying. Not the awkward, pained movements of her old broken wings, but powerful, graceful flight. She banked hard to the right, diving into the storm field with confidence that shocked the observers. The storm field was the first major obstacle. Electromagnetic pulses could disrupt cybernetic systems and fry neural implants. Frost had to navigate through it while avoiding the lightning and using the electromagnetic currents for thrust. Traditional Sraken dragons fought against the storm, using brute force to power through. Frost did something different. She read the currents like Danny had taught her, found the flows of electromagnetic energy and rode them, letting the storm help instead of hinder. She spiraled through the lightning, her white form disappearing and reappearing in the flashes. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she danced through something that should have been impossible. On the viewing platform, Hassick's smug expression faded to shock. "That is not how dragons navigate storms," he said to no one in particular. "That is not how Sraken dragons navigate storms," Ren corrected quietly from the crowd. "She is doing something new." Frost emerged from the storm field at full speed, her wings barely showing signs of strain. The first checkpoint was passed. But now came the drones. 6 automated defense drones activated, their sensors locking onto Frost's signature. They were old war machines, built to kill dragon-mounted warriors, equipped with plasma weaponry and programmed with hundreds of combat scenarios. They spread out in attack formation and opened fire. Frost folded her wings and dropped like a stone. The plasma fire passed overhead, missing completely. Then she extended her wings and shot forward at an angle none of the drones anticipated. She was not flying like a war dragon, all aggression and direct assault. She flew like prey, using every trick of evasion and speed. One drone adapted and pursued. It was faster than Frost in straight flight, closing the distance rapidly. Danny's hands clenched into fists as he watched. This was it. If the drone caught her, its weapons would tear her apart. But Frost had learned from watching Crimson. She had studied how war dragons moved and found their limitations. At the last possible second, she executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a dragon her size. She flipped completely inverted, killed her forward momentum and let the drone shoot past her. Before it could correct its course, she dove toward the rocky terrain below, using the landscape to break line of sight. The drones pursued, but Frost had entered the canyon system. Here her smaller size and enhanced agility were advantages. She wove between rock formations while the drones struggled to track her. One drone crashed trying to follow her through a gap it could not fit. Another fell to programming limitations when Frost used a crystal formation to refract her thermal signature. The remaining 4 drones adapted their tactics trying to box her in. They were learning just as she was. It became a deadly game of 3-dimensional chess played at incredible speeds. Frost led them deeper into the canyons, into territory where their larger frames and rigid programming became liabilities. Then something unexpected happened. Lord Hasek, watching his certainty of victory evaporate, made a decision that would haunt him. He activated Crimson's neural command collar and sent his champion War Dragon into the course. It was illegal, a violation of trial rules, but Hasek was desperate to see Frost fail. Crimson launched from the viewing platform and dove toward the canyon where Frost was still evading the drones. The champion War Dragon was everything Frost was not. Huge, powerful, bred for aggression, and utterly obedient to Hasek's commands. It roared a challenge that echoed through the canyons. The crowd erupted in outrage. Pierce was shouting into his communicator, demanding Crimson's recall. But Hasek simply smiled and claimed technical malfunction. The damage was done. Now Frost had to deal with both the automated drones and a dragon specifically trained to kill. Danny felt ice in his veins. Frost could not fight Crimson. She had no combat training beyond arena basics, and Crimson outweighed her 2-to-1. If the War Dragon caught her, the trial would end in blood. But Frost had something Crimson did not have. She could think for herself. Instead of running from Crimson, Frost flew directly at the War Dragon. Crimson, programmed for standard dragon combat, prepared to meet her head-on. At the last second, Frost dove beneath Crimson's attack and shot upward into a narrow vertical shaft in the canyon wall. Crimson tried to follow but could not fit. The War Dragon roared in frustration. Frost had led Crimson directly into the remaining drone's combat zone. The automated systems detecting 2 dragons now adjusted their targeting, half focused on Crimson, half on Frost. Crimson, bound by combat programming and Hasek's commands, engaged the drones in direct combat. It destroyed one, but the others damaged its wings with plasma fire. Frost used the chaos to escape. She shot out of the canyon system and made directly for the needle, the narrowest and most dangerous part of the trial. Behind her, Crimson struggled with the drones, its larger size making it an easy target in the confined space. The needle was a gap between 2 massive rock formations, barely wide enough for a dragon to pass through with wings folded. Any miscalculation meant death against the razor-sharp stone. Approaching at high speed made it even more dangerous. Most dragons slowed down, took their time. Frost did not slow down. She folded her wings at exactly the right moment and shot through the needle like a silver bullet. Her timing was perfect, the result of hundreds of practice runs in simulation that Ren had provided. She cleared the gap with inches to spare and emerged on the other side with her wings spreading wide to catch the wind. The summit marker was visible now, a bright beacon on top of Mount Razor. Just 500 meters of open flight. Frost was exhausted, her energy reserves depleting fast, but she was so close. Danny looked at his friend with fierce determination. Then she fails flying. Not chained in an execution chamber, not labeled as garbage. She fails as a dragon trying to claim her freedom. That is more than most beings ever get. Ren was quiet for a long moment. Then he placed one clawed hand on Danny's shoulder. You have given her more than wings, human. You have given her dignity. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that. As the sun rose on trial day, Frost opened her eyes and looked at Danny. She stood and extended her wings fully. Ready. The broken albino was broken no more. Now she was just a dragon who wanted to fly. The trial grounds were located at the most inhospitable part of Redstone Station. Here, the station's rotating sections created artificial gravity through dangerous proximity to a permanent electromagnetic storm. The storm had been there for decades, a natural phenomenon that the station builders had incorporated into their defense systems during the Old War. Automated drones still patrolled the area, their programming never deactivated, attacking anything that entered their airspace. Thousands had gathered to watch. Word of the trial had spread beyond the station, drawing spectators from nearby colonies and ships. Most came expecting to see the broken albino fail spectacularly. Some came hoping to see Lord Hasek humiliated. A small group, mostly the workers who had helped build Frost's wings, came to bear witness to something they believed would be historic. Danny stood at the launch platform with Frost beside him. Her white scales seemed to glow in the harsh light, and her silver wings were folded tightly against her body. She was nervous. He could see it in the way her tail twitched and her pupils dilated. But there was determination there too. She had trained for this. She was ready as she would ever be. Lord Hassig stood on the official viewing platform with his champion war dragon Crimson. The noble's expression was smug satisfaction barely concealed behind formal politeness. Next to him, Station Administrator Pierce looked uncomfortable but resigned to whatever outcome would occur. "The rules are simple," Pierce announced to the crowd. "The dragon must complete the full course, navigate the storm field, evade the defense drones, cross the Needle Canyon, and reach the summit marker. Time limit is 1 hour. Any deviation from the course or failure to reach the summit results in disqualification." He paused and returned to Lord Hassig's custody. Danny knelt beside Frost and placed his hand on her neck. "Listen to me, girl. You do not have to prove anything to these people. If at any point you want to stop, you just land. I will figure something else out. Your life is worth more than their approval." Frost looked at him with those pale blue eyes. Then she did something that made the crowd gasp. She extended one wing and gently wrapped it around Danny, pulling him close in what could only be described as a hug. It was a deliberate gesture of affection and trust. "I know," Danny whispered. "I love you too. Now go show them what broken looks like when it is put back together, right?" Frost released him and moved to the launch point. The crowd grew silent as she positioned herself at the edge of the platform. Below her was a 1,000-foot drop into the storm field. Lightning arced through the clouds, and the electromagnetic interference made the air taste like metal. The launch signal sounded. Frost jumped. For a moment she fell, and Danny's heart stopped. Then her wings snapped open and caught the air, and she was flying. Not the awkward, pained movements of her old broken wings, but powerful, graceful flight. She banked hard to the right, diving into the storm field with confidence that shocked the observers. The storm field was the first major obstacle. Electromagnetic pulses could disrupt cybernetic systems and fry neural implants. Frost had to navigate through it while avoiding the lightning and using the electromagnetic currents for thrust. Traditional Sraken dragons fought against the storm, using brute force to power through. Frost did something different. She read the currents like Danny had taught her, found the flows of electromagnetic energy and rode them, letting the storm help instead of hinder. She spiraled through the lightning, her white form disappearing and reappearing in the flashes. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she danced through something that should have been impossible. On the viewing platform, Hassig's smug expression faded to shock. "That is not how dragons navigate storms," he said to no one in particular. "That is not how Sraken dragons navigate storms," Ren corrected quietly from the crowd. "She is doing something new." Frost emerged from the storm field at full speed, her wings barely showing signs of strain. The first checkpoint was passed. But now came the drones. 6 automated defense drones activated, their sensors locking onto Frost's signature. They were old war machines, built to kill dragon-mounted warriors, equipped with plasma weaponry and programmed with hundreds of combat scenarios. They spread out in attack formation and opened fire. Frost folded her wings and dropped like a stone. The plasma fire passed overhead, missing completely. Then she extended her wings and shot forward at an angle none of the drones anticipated. She was not flying like a war dragon, all aggression and direct assault. She flew like prey, using every trick of evasion and speed. One drone adapted and pursued. It was faster than Frost in straight flight, closing the distance rapidly. Danny's hands clenched into fists as he watched. This was it. If the drone caught her, its weapons would tear her apart. But Frost had learned from watching Crimson. She had studied how war dragons moved and found their limitations. At the last possible second, she executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a dragon her size. She flipped completely inverted, killed her forward momentum, and let the drone shoot past her. Before it could correct its course, she dove toward the rocky terrain below, using the landscape to break line of sight. The drones pursued, but Frost had entered the canyon system. Here, her smaller size and enhanced agility were advantages. She wove between rock formations while the drones struggled to track her. One drone crashed trying to follow her through a gap it could not fit. Another fell to programming limitations when Frost used a crystal formation to refract her thermal signature. The remaining 4 drones adapted their tactics, trying to box her in. They were learning just as she was. It became a deadly game of 3-dimensional chess played at incredible speeds. Frost led them deeper into the canyons, into territory where their larger frames and rigid programming became liabilities. Then something unexpected happened. Lord Hassick, watching his certainty of victory evaporate, made a decision that would haunt him. He activated Crimson's neural command collar and sent his champion War Dragon into the course. It was illegal, a violation of trial rules, but Hassick was desperate to see Frost fail. Crimson launched from the viewing platform and dove toward the canyon where Frost was still evading the drones. The champion War Dragon was everything Frost was not. Huge, powerful, bred for aggression, and utterly obedient to Hassick's commands. It roared a challenge that echoed through the canyons. The crowd erupted in outrage. Pierce was shouting into his communicator, demanding Crimson's recall. But Hassick simply smiled and claimed technical malfunction. The damage was done. Now Frost had to deal with both the automated drones and a dragon specifically trained to kill. Danny felt ice in his veins. Frost could not fight Crimson. She had no combat training beyond arena basics, and Crimson outweighed her 2-1. If the War Dragon caught her, the trial would end in blood. But Frost had something Crimson did not have. She could think for herself. Instead of running from Crimson, Frost flew directly at the War Dragon. Crimson, programmed for standard dragon combat, prepared to meet her head-on. At the last second, Frost dove beneath Crimson's attack and shot upward into a narrow vertical shaft in the canyon wall. Crimson tried to follow but could not fit. The War Dragon roared in frustration. Frost had led Crimson directly into the remaining drone's combat zone. The automated systems, detecting 2 dragons now, adjusted their targeting, half focused on Crimson, half on Frost. Crimson, bound by combat programming and Hassick's commands, engaged the drones in direct combat. It destroyed one, but the others damaged its wings with plasma fire. Frost used the chaos to escape. She shot out of the canyon system and made directly for the Needle, the narrowest and most dangerous part of the trial. Behind her, Crimson struggled with the drones, its larger size making it an easy target in the confined space. The Needle was a gap between 2 massive rock formations, barely wide enough for a dragon to pass through with wings folded. Any miscalculation meant death against the razor-sharp stone. Approaching at high speed made it even more dangerous. Most dragons slowed down, took their time. Frost did not slow down. She folded her wings at exactly the right moment and shot through the Needle like a silver bullet. Her timing was perfect, the result of hundreds of practice runs in simulation that Wren had provided. She cleared the gap with inches to spare and emerged on the other side with her wings spreading wide to catch the wind. The summit marker was visible now, a bright beacon on top of Mount Razor, just 500 meters of open flight. Frost was exhausted, her energy reserves depleting fast, but she was so close. The sound was deafening, thousands of voices shouting, cheering, screaming in disbelief. The broken albino dragon that everyone had written off as worthless had completed the trial of winds. Not just completed it, but done so while evading illegal interference from a champion war dragon and surviving obstacles that killed trained warriors. Danny could not move. His legs felt like water and his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Frost stood on the summit platform, her white scales catching the light like a beacon. Her wings were still spread wide, trembling with exhaustion but triumphant. She had done it. She had actually done it. Rachel grabbed Danny's arm, tears streaming down her face. She won. Danny, she won! On the official viewing platform, Lord Hassick looked like he had been struck by lightning. His carefully constructed superiority had just been demolished by the creature he had mocked as cosmic garbage. Station Administrator Pierce was frantically consulting his legal advisors, trying to determine the status of a trial that had been compromised by Hassick's own interference. Grit pushed through the crowd, his rocky face somehow managing to look jubilant. Crimson is alive but grounded. Medical teams are retrieving him now. Hassick is trying to claim equipment malfunction, but the recordings show he deliberately activated the command collar. He cheated and still lost. Frost launched herself from the summit and glided down toward the viewing area where Danny waited. She was barely staying airborne, her energy completely spent, but she made it to the platform and landed with surprising grace considering her exhaustion. Without hesitation, she folded Danny into her wings and held him close while the crowd roared approval. "I am so proud of you," Danny whispered against her scales. So incredibly proud. But the celebration was cut short by Lord Hassick's voice, amplified and filled with barely controlled rage. "This trial is invalid. My dragon systems were compromised. The albino used illegal tactics. The defense drones were not functioning properly. I demand a retrial under proper supervision. The crowd's cheering turned to angry shouts. Even aliens who had never supported Danny before began yelling at Hasek. The Sraken noble had violated trial law by sending Crimson into the course. Everyone had seen it. His attempt to deny Frost's victory was transparent desperation. Ren stepped forward, his scarred face stern. Lord Hasek, you sent your own dragon to interfere with a legal trial. The recordings will show this clearly. Under Sraken trial law, any interference by the challenger results in automatic forfeiture. Frost has won not just her freedom, but the right to claim damages from you for the attempted sabotage. Hasek turned on Ren with fury. You dare speak to me, exile? You who were cast out for weakness? I was cast out for questioning tradition, Ren corrected calmly. A tradition that labeled this magnificent dragon as worthless, simply because her scales were the wrong color. Look at her, Lord Hasek. Really look at her. She just accomplished something that most trained war dragons cannot do. She did it with intelligence and adaptability instead of brute force. And you still cannot admit that you were wrong about her. The crowd murmured agreement. Even some Sraken in the audience were nodding. What Frost had done transcended species loyalty. She had proven that the old ways of judging worth were flawed. Dr. Lynn Torres appeared at Danny's side with her research tablet. Danny, you need to see this. I have been analyzing Frost's performance during the trial. Her neural response times, decision-making speed, tactical adaptability. She is operating at levels that match or exceed recorded genius-level sentient species. She is not just intelligent for a dragon. She is genuinely brilliant. Can we use this? Danny asked. Lynn smiled. I am about to broadcast this data to every scientific institution in the sector. Let them try to claim she is defective after they see her cognitive performance metrics. As Lynn transmitted her findings, Frost began to draw attention from unexpected sources. A group of dragons, all bearing the cybernetic implants of war dragons, had gathered at the edge of the viewing area. They were watching Frost with expressions that their conditioning should have made impossible. Interest, hope, something that might have been longing. One of the war dragons, bearing green scales that marked it as a scout class, took a hesitant step forward. Its handler jerked the command collar, trying to pull it back, but the dragon resisted. For the first time in its controlled life, it was fighting against a direct command. Frost saw the war dragons watching her. She stood tall despite her exhaustion and extended her wings fully. It was not an aggressive gesture, but a display. Look what is possible. Look what you could be if you were free. The green war dragon managed another step forward before its handler activated the pain response in its collar. The dragon whimpered and retreated, but the damage was done. Other war dragons in the crowd had seen one of their own resist. They had seen Frost's freedom and intelligence. Seeds of doubt were planted in minds that were supposed to be incapable of doubt. Hasek realized what was happening and understood the full scope of his mistake. By trying to humiliate Danny and prove Frost worthless, he had instead created a symbol. The broken albino had become something dangerous to the entire Sraken system of dragon control. If one defective dragon could be this capable, what about the others who had been labeled worthless and destroyed? What about the war dragons who served without question? What would happen if they learned to question? This is not over, Hasek said, his voice low and dangerous. That creature may have won her freedom through legal technicality, but there are other ways to deal with problems. Accidents happen in space stations. Repair bays catch fire. I will not tolerate this disruption to proper order. It was a threat, barely veiled. Danny felt cold rage settle in his chest. But before he could respond, Grit stepped forward with Patches, Ribbit, and 24 other workers from various species. If accidents happen to Frost or Danny, Grit said quietly, then accidents might start happening to Sraken interests all over this station. Shipments might get lost, equipment might malfunction, workers might suddenly remember they have other priorities. You are not the only one with power here, Lord Hasek. You are just the only one who forgot that power has limits. It was a remarkable moment. Workers from a dozen different species, most of whom had never agreed on anything before, standing united against a Sraken noble. The balance of power on Redstone Station had just shifted and everyone knew it. Station Administrator Pierce, seeing a potential riot forming, made a quick decision. Lord Hasek, I think it would be best if you and your delegation departed the station for a cooling-off period. I will file the official trial results with the sector authorities. Frost is recognized as an independent entity with full rights under galactic law. Any attempts to harm her or her chosen companions will be treated as criminal assault. Hasik looked like he wanted to argue, but he was intelligent enough to recognize when he had lost. He gathered his entourage and left, but the look he gave Danny promised that this conflict was far from over. As the crowd began to disperse, Danny found himself surrounded by well-wishers and curious aliens who wanted to see Frost up close. She handled the attention with remarkable grace, allowing people to admire her wings and even tolerating careful touches on her scales. She seemed to understand that she had become more than just one dragon. She was proof that the universe's judgments about worth could be wrong. Later that night, after the chaos had settled and the bay was quiet again, Danny sat with Frost and their small group of friends. To Rachel, Lynn, Grit, Patches, Ribbit, Wren, Mrs. Kaufman, and a handful of others who had helped make the impossible happen. "So what happens now?" Rachel asked. "You have got a famous dragon and a repair bay. Hasik is going to keep causing problems. The whole sector is going to hear about this." "I have been thinking about that," Danny said slowly. He looked at Frost, who was resting with her head on his lap. "We cannot stay here. Hasik will find ways to make our lives difficult. And Frost is not the only creature out there that needs help." Lynn's research showed that albino dragons were not genetic failures. They were just different. How many were destroyed before they could prove their worth? How many other species have members that get discarded because they do not fit expectations? "You want to start a sanctuary?" Lynn said with dawning realization. "I want to build a place where broken does not mean worthless," Danny corrected. "Where creatures that have been labeled as failures get a chance to prove everyone wrong. We have the skills, the knowledge, and apparently a network of people willing to help." Wren leaned forward. "There is an unclaimed moon in the outer system. No atmosphere, but that can be fixed with the right equipment. No Sraken authority to interfere. It would require significant resources to establish a habitat. I have access to mining equipment," Patches offered. "And I know about 30 workers who would love to stick it to the establishment by helping build something like this. I can set up biological support systems," Lynn added. "Make it sustainable for multiple species. It would be groundbreaking research." One by one, the others offered their skills and resources. What started as a simple conversation became a plan. Within hours, they had outlined the basics of what would become the sanctuary. A place on an empty moon where the discarded and dismissed could find refuge and purpose. Frost lifted her head and made a low, approving rumble. This was right. This was what all of it had been leading toward. 2 months later, Danny stood on the surface of that moon and watched as the first habitat dome was completed. It was not much yet, just basic life support and landing platforms, but it was a start. Frost circled overhead, her white wings brilliant against the black sky, no longer alone. 3 other dragons flew with her now, all rescues from various stations and colonies. One had been scheduled for termination due to a malformed leg. Another had failed combat training and been discarded. The third was another albino, found in a research facility and nearly dissected for study. All of them were learning to fly properly for the first time in their lives. All of them were discovering that broken wings could be fixed, that failure was not permanent, and that intelligence could flourish without chains. Ships arrived regularly now, bringing more refugees, not just dragons, but creatures from dozens of species. A Tulgran whose arms had been damaged in an industrial accident and declared unemployable. A Felnar whose crystalline fur had grown in the wrong pattern and been rejected by her family. A young Sraken who had questioned tradition and faced exile like Wren. All of them found a place at the sanctuary. Rachel walked up beside Danny, her breath creating small clouds in the thin atmosphere that the habitat processors were slowly thickening. "You know the Sraken Empire has put a bounty on your head, right? They are calling you the human who stole their dragons." "I did not steal anything," Danny replied. "I just reminded them what freedom looks like." A communication alert chimed. Danny checked his tablet and found a message from an unknown source. The text was simple. "We are 3 more war dragons whose handlers died in the recent conflict. We remember what the White One showed us. Can broken dragons find sanctuary with you?" Danny sent back coordinates and access codes. "Yes, come home." Over the following months, the sanctuary grew. Word spread across the sector about the place where the unwanted could become valued, where human ingenuity combined with alien determination created something the universe had never seen before. A community built not on power or dominance, but on the simple belief that every being deserved a chance to prove their worth. Frost became the sanctuary's symbol, her white wings visible from orbit as she flew practice runs with the newer arrivals. She taught them not just how to fly, but how to think for themselves, how to make decisions without waiting for commands, how to be truly free. One evening, as the sun set on their new world, Frost landed beside Danny on his favorite observation point. They had made this a routine, watching the sky together as another day ended. She folded her wings and pressed her snout gently against his shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that never failed to move him. "You know what I realized?" Danny said softly. "Hussik was right about one thing. You were broken. Your wings were shattered, your body damaged, your spirit nearly destroyed. But he was wrong about what broken meant. He thought it meant worthless, final, beyond repair. But broken just means you need someone willing to do the work of fixing. And once you are fixed, you are not just as good as you were before. You are better, stronger, because you understand what it means to be broken and you never take being whole for granted." Frost rumbled her agreement. She spread her wings wide, the silver-white surfaces catching the last rays of sunlight. They were magnificent wings, built with care by hands and hearts that believed she was worth saving. They were wings that had carried her through a trial designed to kill her, wings that now carried her wherever she wanted to go. In the distance, other dragons were landing, returning from their daily flights. The sanctuary was alive with movement and sound, with creatures who had been told they were failures learning to thrive. It had started with a cruel joke, an albino dragon with broken wings given to a human mechanic as an insult. But that joke had become something extraordinary. Proof that worth was not determined by genetics or first impressions. Proof that kindness and skill could rebuild what cruelty had destroyed. Proof that broken wings could not only be fixed but could become beautiful. Danny looked at Frost, this magnificent creature who had taught him as much as he had taught her, and smiled. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked. More refugees were arriving, including a shipment of dragons rescued from an illegal fighting ring. They would need help, healing, and hope. Frost extended one wing and gently touched Danny's face with the tip. Her pale eyes gleamed with intelligence and determination. Yes, she was ready. They were all ready. Together, they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The same stars that had once looked down on a broken dragon in a cruel world. But that world was changing, one rescued creature at a time. And it had all started with a human mechanic who looked at something everyone else called worthless and saw infinite possibility instead. The albino dragon with broken wings had been given as a cruel joke. But the universe had the last laugh, because that joke had become a revolution.